Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are, and thank you for joining today's webinar, What's Coming in the 2015 Intacct Spring Release. I'm Megan Turco, and I'll be your moderator today. Before we jump in, I'm just going to briefly go over how to use your webinar console. The orange arrow on the right side of your screen will let you toggle your control tray open or closed. And at the bottom of the control tray, you'll see a chat window. Please feel free to submit your questions at any time throughout the webinar via the chat function. Also on the GoToWebinar console, you'll see an area for audio settings. If you're calling in through your telephone, please choose the Use Telephone option. Alternatively, if you're using your computer speakers, please select the Use Mic and Speakers option. Additionally, I do want to note that today's webinar is being recorded. We'll be able to send out the slides as well as a link to the on-demand recording to the webinar in about 2 days. So definitely keep an eye out for that email if you're interested in accessing the webinar or the slides or sharing them with any colleagues. And with that, I would like to introduce today's speakers. Today's featured webinar speakers include Scott Schimberg, who's a partner here at Armanino. Scott has a mixture of industry experience and has held positions as assistant controller, and VP of finance. He's also a member of the Institute of Management Accountants and has 15 years consulting experience, during which he's helped numerous companies implement ERP systems. We also have Greg Block, who is a senior manager here at Armanino. Greg has served as a CFO for middle market companies, where he's helped businesses achieve significant growth objectives, as well as managed mergers and acquisitions. Greg, a certified Intacct implementation consultant, has been involved in implementing software solutions throughout his career and has been implementing software as a consultant since 2004. It's great to have you both with us here today. I'm going to briefly cover our learning objectives for today's webinar, and then I'll pass the presentation over to Greg. During today's webinar, you should be able to learn some features released by Intacct for the Q2 spring release. We'll also share some details about Armanino's Evolution Conference coming up later this year, as well as the dates of Intacct's 2015 Intacct Advantage Conference. And with that, I will pass it over to Greg.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to start with financial reporting enhancements, and we'll spend a little time talking about each of these topics. The alternate reporting accounts gives you the ability to create an additional account name. This is very helpful in statutory accounting and where you need to have different naming conventions for that purposes, or if you have a multi-entity and shared environment. If we can go to the next slide, we'll talk about trending with the current period to date offset. So what we're able to do here is that we have the ability to trend with a precise date range using a comparison by the date. You don't have to do any additional setup, and this works with any fiscal year or customer and accounting period. And we're recommending that you look at it from a viewpoint of that you select the current quarter or year to date, and then for the custom accounting periods, the number of the date will be measured from the beginning of that period defined. So the trending with the current period to date offset, you would go into your financial report writer. You're going to bring up the reports, go into the columns section. And when you go into that column, you'll see that there's an offset period, and it allows you to control the precision of the amount of data that's automatically presented in that offset period. We've also added another feature, Intacct's added another feature on the summary column, and so you can apply this calculation to an account group total. You need to determine what the structure you're going to use and how that calculation and formula. And it's on the columns tab. You select the column type, and then you evaluate how to compute the data, or simply apply how to compute the formula, or simply apply the total. And there's help within Intacct on every page, so that's another way to help you find additional information. Intacct's also done some enhancements with the financial report percentages, and so we have the ability to convert percentages, the decimal equivalents into percentages, and we also have the ability to append percentages of the percentage sign. and there's also a rounding option. You can also select to display with or without the sign, the percentage sign. So again, you're in your financial report writer. You're in the columns area of your report, and you'll notice that there's some additional fields saying show as, and you can pick from the drop down whether you're showing it as a percentage or show it as with an append sign. And then there's also a ability to apply rounding to this. So you can apply a precision control to determine how many decimals you have in that particular column that, from a precision requirement. They've also, Intacct's also added this control for the period and budget variance columns. So in addition to the calculation or summary type columns, we can also apply that within those additional variance columns that Intacct makes available to you. And here's the example where you can see that you can determine whether you want to apply the operation to the total or whether you want to have it a simple total. Intacct's added the ability to drill down now into budgets. So again, no setup is required to do this. When you're displaying the budget in the financial report, there's a drill down link available. You can further drill down into the budget entry screen, and you also can select CSV formats on budget if you want to export or re-import budget information. And then you also have the multi-select window on the show dimensions value to display or sort the dimensions that you want to see. So let's take a look in a little more detail. So this is a new report. This budget report is available in the General Ledger module under Reports, and you have the ability to control the period. You have the ability to control the account ranges. You have the ability to select and sort the dimensions, just like any other General Ledger type report, and you have the ability to get a CSV file and upload it. IGC. Previously and originally with IGC within Intacct, when you selected a budget in the consolidation, that budget was then when you entered it, it was being entered in the currency of the entity or the location that's being consolidated. So it would go through currency conversions. In a previous release, Intacct made available the ability to, in just the financial report writer, have multiple budget columns where you could maintain those budgets in without it going through any type of currency translation. And then this is just a continuation of the additional capabilities that Intacct is adding. So now they're being able to set up the ability that when you create the budget, you call it a consolidated budget. You know, it has a requirement that you have to have your Intacct global consolidations enabled or subscribed to. You want to when you check that consolidated budget checkbox, you're also going to select the consolidated currency, and then Intacct's not going to translate that budget for you. You can set this as a default. You can have an unlimited number of budgets, and you can also update the default for as you pass through fiscal year when new budgets are created. So let's take a look here. Again, we're in the financial report writer. You can see a theme here. We're on columns. So when you have that budget, you're able to pick that budget. The budget was originally set up through the General Ledger module, but you have the ability here to pick and compare as many of those budgets. And again, the key takeaway is it doesn't go through the currency translation. Moving on to dimensions. So we'll look at a couple of additional features that Intacct's made available. First, we'll look at the filtering for report usage. So what Intacct's allowing us to do now is to dynamically allocate or dynamically customize the data in terms of the availability. Previously, when you were writing reports that you wanted to limit access, you spent a lot of time going through and creating custom user groups and writing the reports multiple times and assigning them to specific groups. So now you have the ability to create a single dimension group filter, and then it's best basing it on the current user. It's best for the department, the location, employee, or project user. It doesn't make any difference whether that user is a business user or an employee user, and it's a great help for dashboards and financial and GL reports. Not all the reports are supported for all the dimension groups, so you want to make sure that you consider that when you're building this out. You know, we want to use a financial report with the current user is the best one to maximize. So let's take a little further look at that. So this is an example of a project group. So we're creating a project group, and in that project group we're indicating that it's going to be based upon a certain filter criteria. And the field is what we're looking at here is project manager ID, and Intacct has now exposed an operator that is called is current user. And so by setting that up, when an individual logs in and you're running a report that has that type of dimension filtering grouping on it, he's only going to see the project reports or the project information for those that he is the project manager on. Same concept carries across if it was on a department manager or location manager. So we also, Intacct has also done some things with some auto-filling dimension information, and this is the ability to take and put together relationships. And so you have to turn it on. You have to configure your general ledger. You have to, drag and drop the dimension in order of precedence that you want to use, and it also assumes that you've already previously created that relationship. And so there's help topics to help you walk through how to create this, but let's take a look at this in a little bit more detail. So what we can do is we can map to autofill a related dimension. So an example that we're going to look at is we're using a customer, and based upon that customer, we want to put in a certain dimension class. And then we have the ability to override the value, and we'll look a little bit more on those type of rules and how that works. And then the override has the ability to be limited or be based upon a priority. So this screen has quite a bit of information on it, and as Megan mentioned earlier, the slide deck will be available in a couple days. But the idea behind this is that we have a customer, and it's supposed to, when customer Sony is used, it's supposed to have class 5200 associated with it. And when department 500 sales is used, the class is supposed to be 8721, which is accounting. So if we have override not enabled for the customer in the scenario 1, when the customer Sony is selected, it will autofill with retail. Next, when department sales is selected, the value for class will not change because the priority of the customer wins. Now, if we have override enabled for dimensions, when department sales is selected, class accounting will autofill. So next, when we set customer is selected, class will be updated to retail because override is enabled. And then the other example is when customer Sony is selected, class will autofill to retail. And when department sales is selected, class will be updated with accounting since override is enabled. Priority is not taken into account, and the class set by the department overrides the class set by the customer. So we'll look at, that's the scenario here, but we'll also then talk about how do I use this. So you must have platform enabled. If you do not currently have platform enabled, please reach out to us. There's a process that we need to go through with Intacct to to get you a no-charge platform enablement for turning on dimensioning filtering. You have to have the admin permissions to create relationships, and note that the quick entry screens are not supported for this autofill. So the setup is that you're going into Platform, Objects, List. You're going to select the GL account or location, the relationship, create a new relationship, and then you'd be following all the same steps that you'd creating relationships previously, but you're going to stop at the define the relationship type and make certain additional selections there. So we go in, we're creating the relationship. We are able to select the many GL accounts to many departments. We're going to be able to go into the relationship type and then for the filtering, and then create many GL accounts to many departments. We're able to change the display, so you go into the GL accounts and edit the accounts, edit the page, and then show the lookup, and then you have to save this information. This will then make it display as a pick list. It'll have a slightly different look and feel to it, but it'd be very similar to what you currently are used to seeing when you pick drop downs within the other dimensions of Intacct. And then you have the ability to select the related value. So you have the ability here to multi-select what that information is to be. And when you view the account, you're able to assign a filtered pick list. You set the values on that. All right. So a lot of information on the dimensions. Like I said, the slide deck will be available, and you can also reach out to us at Armanino if you want someone to help walk you through creating those particular dimensional relations if you're currently not using them. Moving into project accounting. Project accounting is one of the areas that Intacct continues to make continued enhancements. Almost every quarter release has additional information on project accounting. So they're doing some more things with the billing information. You've probably seen, if you're using project, the project ID is down the sales order and invoice headers. And they've also added a number of fields available in the Intacct Word Merge add-on to help better create or more easily create invoices and modifying the invoice formats. So let's dig in a little bit more here. So the billing information that's being passed from project to invoice, so how do I use that? Well, you just create and maintain your projects normally. There's a place now on the project. There's a new tab that allows you to default an invoice message into the options tab. This is just the first start of this type of information, and so well, more information to come, more options to come later as Intacct continues to roll this out. We then run generate invoice with the invoice by project option, and so the setup and configuration, what you're doing is you're putting those terms, any custom fields that you want to be passed. You can override defaults in the generate invoice preview. There's really nothing to configure except if you're creating custom fields, and just you want to remember that if you want that custom field, if you want it as part of order entry, that custom field needs to have the same name in the order entry document header object also, so that Intacct knows how to link them. So this is the project master file record. There's that invoice option and the invoice message. And as I said, this is the start of more information being planned to be made available in this particular area. And so this is just kind of showing the type of information that could be mapped here. So we have the ability to have terms information come through. We have the ability to have custom fields come through. We have the ability to have that message come through from the project ID. As we're talking about, it's the project ID is now exposed in the sales order and invoice headers, and it gives you some additional flexibility by doing that. So first, it can be entered just below the customer. When you select a customer initially, that project ID list is limited just to those with the same customer. Or alternatively, when you're in the order entry screen, you can select the project ID first, and then the customer is filled in. And then all the line items, when you go into the line item detail area of the sales order or sales invoice, will default to that project ID from the header, but you still have the ability to change it, and you are still allowed to have multiple projects per document. So the project, the setup configuration project dimension must be turned on in order entry configuration screen. It will appear in all transaction definitions. And just as a note that the project is not in the recurring template header yet on the order entry, but it's planned in a future release. So here is you can see on the sales order, the project information is now available in the header, and it does that lookup, and it will either default the customer, and if you select that first, or if you select the customer, it will default. It will list only the projects that have been assigned to that customer. You also have the ability on your listers in order entry now to be able to search on the project. So that's another nice feature that's available. So previously you had to write an ad hoc report or and jump through several other steps to be able to see that information. All right, so this project reference information is now also being added to the invoice formats. There's many new fields that have been added, and this is there's an add-on within the Intacct product, the mail merge word add-on that you're used to be able to drag and drop these information. And this new information applies both to the header and the line item, to use this word on, if you're already using the word add-on capabilities, you don't have any additional configuration required. But if you've never done it, you would need to install the word add-on and then go in and create or modify an invoice format, and then you can set up custom fields with the exact name as the invoice header object, and then these fields are also available to be populated or to print on your invoice document. So here's just a few of the fields, or here are the fields that have been now available. There's additional information that's, and this is just a screenshot from the word add-on merge feature. With that, we'll turn it over to Scott.
Excellent, thank you, Greg. Let's see. So we will get into some inventory enhancements. We haven't seen inventory enhancements from Intacct in quite some time, but they've done 3 of them for this release. And so the big piece that they've done is really around cleaning up some of the reports, and they've really addressed the inventory valuation report, the inventory journal report, the inventory register report, physical inventory report, and the tracking report. And at the highest level, what they've really done is cleaned up the presentation of it, making data consistent across the rows and columns, where before they might have had a mixture of sales data and cost data. They've cleaned it up to make it more readable and usable for the end user, as well as consistency. There is nothing that needs to be done in order to take care of this functionality. It is just the new layout of the reports that are existing in the system. And a good example of one of the changes is that, like on the inventory register report, they've fixed the quantity in and quantity out, so that now shows as a positive incoming and outgoing versus a negative number coming in, or the reversal of that number. So it helps just make it a lot easier for the user to look at. Another thing that has come into play related to average cost, and this is an important piece of it, that if you have a transaction that is dated in the past on the order entry activity, like in this example where it's highlighted for transaction 5, where you're going back in time, maybe on in the middle of the month of April, it is picking up the cost that is appropriate at that point in time versus what used to be done as the cost today. So there's a big change in the way that they're calculating that average cost. Another piece on the inventory is really getting that view into a portioned journal entry. So that is breaking out the things like the freight and tax or VAT tax or something along those lines. And so in order to set that up so that it works correctly, you'd go into the transaction definition, of which you'll need to make sure you have access to the transaction definitions. You'll modify that by going into the PO GL information, checkbox, post additional GL entry, and set up those GL account numbers so that it will post into it. And then when you get onto the transactions itself, it will enable that apportioned subtotal. So when you're viewing the data, it'll have it broken out for that estimated tax, as well as fix the PDF document for those POs. So that's a big adjustment in that area as well. Okay, moving on into the delivery and access of emails and the email template. There's some nice enhancements here, specifically related to that ability to easily email or print invoices or transactions. So in this case, on the top section under the order entry sales invoice, over on the right, you'll now see the print email concept right from the list view, so that you can access it, the print and email. You could also do and print an email directly from the sales invoice document itself. So on the bottom portion of that, you should see that activity in there as well. What you'll get when you go into that delivery access print email section is you could either preview the document. You can also see the default settings that are there, and then you could override them if you would like to. So that's a nice concept. Once you're ready to go on your email, you could go ahead and click OK and send that out. So it's a nice improvement in being able to automate that communication to customers and get a copy invoice out. Another piece that's coming into play that is helpful on the electronic communication is the email delivery log. And so really what this email log is intended to do is to give you insight into the emails that have been sent, what has been successful, and what is not been successful, either maybe from a wrong email address or an incomplete email address or something along in those lines. So on this slide, you'll see the top one has an error and the others are sent. And you could get different views into how these are set up, whether it's off of the, looking at the customer. You could look at all emails sent to a customer. You could look at all emails sent for a specific invoice or transaction that comes in. And so we'll go through a little bit of that. Once you click into the email transaction, you'll be able to see the data, where it went, who it went to, the note that was in there, and then also the PDF that was attached to it down at the bottom. And you do have the option to be able to resend it right from here. So it's a great way of being able to follow up quickly to your customers and make sure that their accounts payable department has a copy of the invoice right away. The other thing is when you drill into the log and you're looking at the specific error messages, you can identify what is the reason that it's not going in. So it could be a wrong email address, an incomplete email address, and it could help you identify why is your customer not getting that information. And when we're looking at the individual transactions. So on the top here, we have the order entry transaction or the sales invoice transaction, and under the history, it now has an email history. So you could look at the email history of that individual transaction. So if you click into that and you have that email delivery log underneath it, you could see that the invoice has been sent 3 times to that customer. So it really gives that auditability and that tracking of how you're communicating and how your customers are receiving that document. Likewise, under the customer tab, you could have a drill into that as well, based off of where it has the last invoice date and then the delivery and email history of that to the customer. So you could not only look at it from a power of being able to look at the specific invoice, you could also look at the specific emails to that customer for all of their activity that has been automatically generated from the system. And then you can drill in from that email delivery log into the specific situations. A couple things about the email template is that is coming is being able to have the logo. So I don't know if you saw that on the original email, but one thing that is coming is being able to add a logo onto your email activity. So that's a coming soon concept. When you do that, you'll go to your email template and you'll see coming soon, you'll see a include logo, and then where do you want it aligned. And in this case, it's set up for the bottom left on the email, right underneath the signage from Frank Bailey, in this case, for hosting company. And so that'll become more personalized to your specific company versus just having it generic from Intacct. All right, a big thing that Intacct has been talking about for quite some time is the chatter. And so as we go forward, we'll continue to talk about chatter and how to use chatter within the Intacct system. And so one concept that will be important to be able to use, and we think will add a lot of value, is to create groups or collaborative groups so that the users, as they go in, they can communicate effectively as teams. And so kind of think of this in terms of maybe you have people that are working on a project together and you're validating time or expenses or asking each other questions. You can keep that grouping of the logs and the communication all within that chatter so that everyone is remaining informed about what's going on with that particular project. Likewise, you could see that happening with the finance team, and if there's inquiries or notes related to specific transactions, and then it keeps that history and that log of that information. Well, the grouping allows it to be very focused to individuals becomes meaningful, so it's not broadcast amongst the entire company. You can also keep the groups as private. So if it's a private group, only those that are participating in the group will be able to see that information. So it can be a very effective tool to keep people within your organization focused and really working through the right areas. And in order to get this set up within the Intacct, you'll be able to identify an area for creating groups within the chatter setup. And so once you're in the group section, in the upper right-hand corner, you can click on New Group, and then you can add the individuals to that group, and you could also get insight into the group information from the screen. But within each group, there will be a person that will manage the group membership, and you can add or remove members from that group as appropriate. So again, kind of think of being able to effectively communicate within a project we would see quite often, and then also within the different transactions and activity within the finance role as well. And you can add and make as many groups as you need in order to be able to really make your workflow efficient and effective. Before we go on to the next piece of it, we'd like to do just a survey, since the chatter is a new concept to our finance organizations and what we're seeing. We'd like to just do a poll and identify what your thoughts are in terms of deploying this within your organization. And so, is this something you'd look at doing within 6 months, 7 to 12 months? You're not sure, or no, we don't think this will be useful for our organization. And we'll give just a few seconds more to get it going. There's still a few people responding on this. And we'll share the results here in just a second. So we'll go ahead and close in 3, 2, 1. Let's go ahead and close the results. Okay, not surprising with the bulk of the group in the unsure category related to chatter. It is a kind of a new technology, new workflow being introduced into the finance organizations or the groups that are not used to working with this type of a technology. We've seen it deployed in CRM modules and activity. So this will be a new concept. So not surprised to see the unsure. It is nice to see that about 25% roughly would like to do it sooner versus later on that. So very interesting as it goes forward, and we'll be monitoring this and communicating back how this is working and what people are seeing in that area. Okay. Go back one more. One new functionality that Intacct is deploying are what's called high security checks and functionality. So you can order pre-printed checks from Intacct and then have that set up within your system to print on the high security check or format as the default. And so if you'd like more information about how to order those checks, and that's a feature coming soon in the near future, you could do that by going into the Intacct help section and type in as a search high security check, and it will take you to a link that will link you to how to order it. All right, another feature that is coming into play is the ability to override AR and AP account. So like the default account for the AP payable or the AR receivable account. And so kind of think of that as the ability to be able to have maybe a different customer type or transaction have a different AR account. And that's really the direction that's coming into play. And so you can go in and set this up so that you can use that and have it go in. There's a couple call outs that we just want to bring out as really important. And under the notes section at the bottom, it says only the AR invoices, the AP bill, and the AR and AP adjustment screens support this feature. So if you're using something along the lines of the recurring invoices, the manual deposits, the quick check entry, quick invoice entry, advances type concepts, those transactions will not allow today that override account. So just be cautious of that when you look at deploying, that there is some limitation around that functionality that comes in. And then for other features that are coming into play, there's a simplified calculation for AR discounts, and this and it's really the auto-applied discounts at cash receipts. So kind of helping that workflow of applying cash receipts coming in. The check delivery and pre-printed check stock for the same account, allowing you a choice, and so that you can select that versus having it predefined. The the default memos on the journal entries, that's a pretty cool feature that you can go in and put in a memo and then click on a button for apply, and it'll apply to all the lines on your journal entry. So being a prior controller, that's something that I would really like to utilize and for some time savings. And then there are new AR payment term discounts where you can have that specifically for just the line items or the total invoice. So it allows you to get that a little bit more granular and specific as to what the discount would apply to. I think that'll be helpful. And then improved payment automation with Wells Fargo. You might have noticed already how they've changed the naming convention of the different payment types from Wells Fargo if you're using this functionality from that. But it's also allowing you to have that be a default payment type for your AP as a default or for specific vendors. And then when you go in for those specific vendors, you can do a search for Wells Fargo payment vendors and then do a selection criteria for that for your check run. So they've helped automate that functionality. And then the inventory adjustment screens can be edited very similar to the purchase order and order entry, where you could promote and demote activity onto the line detail. And so that piece of it will be nice in terms of just the speed and auto data entry and being able to make that happen. And another area for people that have had, or companies have had customizations and specifically around integrations, and they're doing those on their own, they should point their IT departments to go out to the developer section and look at the security policy updates that Intacct is deploying and make sure that they're being compliant with that. Intacct takes the security process very seriously and really wants to make sure that your system's secure. And so this will be a process for them to go out and do. Okay, something to put on your calendar will be our Intacct Advantage for 2015. So please mark your calendars, November 9th to the 13th. And I would say, stay tuned anytime this month. Intacct will be announcing the registration. One thing that we found is that if you register early for the hotel, that's very beneficial because you'll get typically if you do that early, you can get into the same hotel as the event versus being at a different hotel. So last year or the years before, they've had to have more than one hotel just because of the attendance has been very high. From that, overall, the feedback from our clients has been very positive about the education that has come out and the collaboration and being able to meet with Intacct technical people, executives, and so on and so forth. So the feedback has been very, very good.
Thanks, Scott. So I'm actually going to go over some details on Armanino's own conference coming up later this year in September. The 2015 Evolution Client Conference is it's going to be the first year that we've had a conference quite like this. So we have some really great educational tracks for really any, no matter your focus or your industry, it'll be really great educational content for everyone. Some of it will be focused on higher level professional development. And then we also have those more detailed, specific technology tips, tricks, updates, and things like that for business leaders. And we'll definitely also have different types of presentations and showcase panels with public company CFOs or, those who've made the move to the cloud. And then, higher level looks at SEC filing hot buttons and things like that. So it's really going to cover the span of everything that Armanino has. And we actually have also partnered with St. Mary's College of California School of Economics and Business Administration. They will be offering business certification tracks for our IPO readiness, FP&A, and ERP tracks. And then we also have California CE available for those 3 tracks, as well as our cloud and data security. So it's definitely going to be a really great event for, any business leader who's trying to, sort of advance your strategic planning. I definitely recommend to register for the early bird pricing by July 31st. Registration is now open as of last week. And it's, of course, it is available on the website and everything like that. So we will send out these slides later on. So you'll have that link for ease of access to click on, or you're welcome to go to our website now and check it out. And with that, actually, we will go over some of our Q&A that's come in. Actually, I'm sorry. First, we can kind of conclude about what we've learned today, and then we'll go to Q&A.
Yeah, so just at the high level, we've learned about the Intacct Q2 release or spring release, our evolution conference here at Armanino, and then the Intacct Advantage dates to be looking forward as you go into the near future.
And thank you so much to Scott and Greg for our presenters today. We do have a few questions that came in. The first one, actually, this was part of your presentation earlier, Greg. Can the dimension mapping be used to create a pick list for an individual vendor? I believe your example, Greg, used the customer.
So yes, we can associate pick lists with the vendor. So yeah, we could have a dimension that's tied to the vendor. It's analogous to what we're doing with the customer with the dimension relationship.
Okay, great. And then actually there's a follow-up question from one of our other audience members also on dimension mapping. Who would they contact to get access to the dimension mapping?
So we go ahead, Scott.
I was going to say they should go back to their either account manager or sales rep. So if they're in an implementation, they could talk to their implementation consultant or their sales rep. If they're on support, meaning they're using the system, they can submit a support ticket or contact their account manager.
Perfect. Thank you both on those ones. Our next question is, with regard to the customer detail email history, will that also show when statements are sent, or is it limited to order entry transactions at the current time?
Okay, so the feature that Scott was showing is order entry specific. There is a email delivery log under the company area that will show information about a statement going out in terms of whether it was, but it won't have the level of detail that that is available in the order entry. It's our understanding that Intacct is looking to roll this out to purchasing, and they'll look to roll it out to other features, but the detail Scott was showing is order entry.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, and then Greg, there's one last question of which I don't know the date of it, of when will Chatter be available?
I don't have a specific date either. It has been in a limited release based upon certain requirements, so we'll have to get back to them with the specifics of that.
Yeah, historically, when Intacct does an announcement at the Advantage conference, they have definitely deployed it before the next conference. The year or 2 years ago, they did the user-defined dimensions and having that functionality, and that came out, just a few months prior to the next conference. So I would assume they're going to do the same thing with Chatter, and one of the reasons that they're putting that time in is to make sure that it's working and it's a much more meaningful process. So they have put it out in limited release. They're using it internally within their own group, and they're making improvements to the process of it. So it's a very meaningful process as it comes out right from the get-go. At least that's what they've communicated to us.
And if someone's interested, if they could send us their specifics about how what they're currently doing with Salesforce and things, we can look to see if they meet the criteria.
Perfect.
Correct.
Thank you both. It actually looks like that's about all of the questions that we have for today. So we will actually be able to end a little bit early and give you all back some of your time. If you do have specific questions, definitely please feel free to contact Scott or Greg directly. Both of their contact information is up on the screen. And of course, as I mentioned, we will be sending the slides, so you don't need to worry about copying it down right now. I'm sure a number of you already have their contact info. As you exit today's webinar, there is a quick survey, so please take a moment to let us know your thoughts on how we did today and any other content that you might like to see in the future. And thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Scott and Greg, for presenting today. That was some great information. And to everyone, have a great rest of your day.